Hello YouTube, it's DasGregor and welcome to part 5. And guess what? I'm inside of Gentoo. Now we'll find an empty page. There we are. Now you go. Now wait, Das, you were going to show us how to get from blank nothing to something nice. And this already looks, alright, maybe not too nice, but it looks like something. I'll go over a few things with you. First off, if you remember, if we go into here, um, in the last part, we installed Xorg, awesome fonts. The awesome fonts, they're mainly needed for these icons over here. So I have this little diskette that shows me my free space on this partition. I have a little battery icon that shows me the percentage. This battery is pretty much toast at 85%, never goes above it, but it will start going down. Temperature icon for the temperature of the CPU, and that's pretty much all I'm really using out of the awesome fonts, but that's what it's used for. The D menu, of course, if we go to say something like this right here, we do Alt D, that brings up the D menu, and that has that. And if we get back into my notes here, Compton allows for transparency, so if we are here, you can see that you can slightly see the wallpaper in the background, and that allows for that. The PN mixer is this little icon right here, which allows me to change and set things there. The X screensaver, you all should know, is for setting your screensaver, and nitrogen for the wallpaper. So for instance, if we were to go to a blank area and go to nitrogen, we can actually set whichever wallpaper we want and apply it, and that sets it to where you have something in your background. And let's go ahead and get out of that, get back into our notes. Tactile 3 is the theme or the scheme, and of course the icons that I've set from this setup. We've installed PCManFM for file manager, and simple screen recorder, of course, what I'm using to record right now. Scrot is used for doing screenshots. I'm using URXVT for the terminal. Now, if you don't want to use that, it's really easy to just do something such as the XFCE4 terminal or the LX terminal or any terminal that you're wanting to use. As lightweight as those desktop managers are, it's not that big a deal. In fact, I'm pulling in bits and pieces from different things. For instance, I like to use LX Appearance to set up the theme and icons, which is coming from LXQT. And I have finally gotten a configuration file that works well for RxVT here, and I'm using that and I'm copying that. But when I first used it, this was one of the most difficult things to set up and get to the way I liked it. And there's still some things about it that still don't work right for me. I still have problems with copy and paste and other things that other terminals just work proper without too much hassle. But this is what comes in the X11 portage area, so that's why I installed it. But honestly, if I were you and just starting out, I wouldn't use it right away. I would go with something like the XFCE4 terminal, and all you'd have to do that would be emerge-av XFCE4 dash terminal, I believe it is. Put in your little password. Now, of course, I have an alias set up, so when I do emerge, it does sudo emerge for me. And see, it just pull in a couple packages to go ahead and be able to have that. So very simple to do. So if we go back into here, let's see. Of course, the browser is your browser of choice. With Chrome, I chose Chrome just because I like it. It works well for me. Now, one thing I want to mention about when I went to get to that part, because there was some time between part 3 and part 4, I actually had to do an merge sync and update the world because the Chrome binaries were already outdated and needed to be renewed so that I could go ahead and pull down the newest ones. Of course, I talked about QV4L2, which you get with the V4L utils. Now, it used to be in the past you had to enable the Qt option, and evidently in the newest one, Qt5 was by default already available. I installed LeafPad, which is a very simple editor, which is what we're using here. Before I was using gedit inside of LFS, which is what we built Gentoo from. LX Appearance, like I mentioned, that's a very nice program from LXQT. And if you run it, you can very easily choose your widget setups, set up your colors here, choose your icon themes, mouse cursors, fonts, etc. Very easy to use, very nice, very lightweight, which is what you're going for if you're using i3. Now we get back in here, and of course we did all of that. That's pretty much where I left off in the last video, was this section right here. Now, after I rebooted and I went into Gentoo from LFS just to test everything out, I went ahead and I wanted to record and let you know what I had done so that if you were trying to duplicate everything and say, well, hey, wait a minute, Das, this is not working the way yours did. Why is that? I want to go through everything up to date to this moment in time and talk to you about what I've done. So after I rebooted into Gentoo, of course, we tested that way back in part 3. I went ahead and installed screenfetch because I like to be able to see this little bit right here that tells me what's going on. I forgot that we should have installed sudo right off the bat way up here because that is a must-have utility, and setting up sudo. So when you install and you do your emerge of sudo, for instance, you're going to have to go into super user and then edit the sudoers file in the etc directory. So right now, since I already have that set up, I'm just going to do sudo nano -w/etc sudoers. And you just want to scroll down here to where you see root and duplicate that for your user ID. And that sets it up so you have to put your password in every time. It's much more secure than, say, doing the wheel and no password. Or if you don't want to put your username in here and you've added yourself to the wheel group, you can just uncomment this section right here and you should be fine. So going back into here, I had to install USB utils. Well, I didn't really have to, but I couldn't do an ls USB. And when I first was testing everything to make sure things like the webcam were working, they did not right off the bat. And I realized it's because I wasn't in the video group as my user ID. So initially I thought, oh, I need to look at that and make sure that I had installed the webcam correctly. And to do that, ls USB with a -v for verbose allows you to see that. I also installed alsa-tools, so I'd have the alsa mixer because I needed that to be able to initially unmute the sound and verify that sound levels were correct. I also installed P7-zip so that I had a GUI unzip and uncompression and compressing tool for PCMan FM. And then I was looking for a mixer for this right here. So if you go to control panel, I have this, and you can look and you can see there's the main window. And I was trying to figure out what this was. This is what I was using in LFS. So I went back in LFS and I realized, oh, I'm using the XFCE4 mixer. Well, probably because I installed XFCE4 originally with LFS before I decided, let's be brave, let's be bold, let's install i3 even though there's no instructions out there to do that in LFS. And when I went to do this inside of Gentoo, XFCE4 Mixer is no longer available as an ebuild. So I thought about installing it from source, and actually I started going down that route, and then the source was failing. So there is a really nifty location. It's called gpo.zugania or zugania.org, ZUGAINA.org. And there you can search for overlays and packages, and they will tell you what overlay a certain package is in if you're missing it. So I looked up XFCE4 Mixer, and I found that Fun2 overlay still had it, as well as the links on or links on. What I did was I went ahead and just downloaded the ebuild, and once I downloaded the ebuild, because it goes in, um, let's see, XFCE Extra, XFCE4 Mixer. So in here, if we look into now user portage, XFCE Extra, then you'll see there's a lot of things in there. And hopefully you can see, I'm not sure if I can make those bigger yet. Yeah, let's make that a little bit bigger. There we go. So hopefully you can see that a little bit better. And I went ahead and created the directory XFCE4 Mixer, as we see here, and I copied as the sudo command or super user that ebuild into this directory. So if we go into cd user portage XFCE extra XFCE FF, yeah, you know what I'm trying to say, Mixer, you'll see that there's the ebuild. Now, to make that work, I then had to use the sudo command ebuild. You add this ebuild file and you say manifest afterwards, such as ebuild xfce and then manifest. And what that does is it creates the manifest area here and adds this package into your portage. Now, this isn't a permanent solution. This is kind of a temporary solution. Now, if you really wanted to do this correctly, you would actually set up your own user ebuild section and create this and then create the manifest directory for it, and it would look in that different place for it. But that's a whole different can of worms. We don't want to get into it right now. I just wanted to let you know what I did to make this work for now. So by doing that, I was then able to use the standard emerge-av xfce4 mixer, and it pulled in whatever it needed and it installed without an issue. And then I was able to configure by right-clicking here, going to preferences and setting the behavior so that the control command was xfce4-mixer. I believe by default, I believe it does come with it's PAV, it's the Pulse Audio control mixer, but we did not install Pulse Audio. So if you go ahead and install and set up Pulse Audio in Gentoo, then that should work fine for you. But since I didn't do that, and I may do that in the future, I like the XFCE4 mixer. I'm kind of upset that it's been decommissioned or moved out. I'm not sure why that's happened, but yeah, it is what it is, and that's what happens sometimes with progress. And as old dinosaurs, we get stuck in the background. So we move on. I wanted to talk about that. I did install VLC because I need to be able to test my video from Simple Screen Recorder. And the only thing I added to VLC was a use flag for Matroska, because I always use that when I'm in Simple Screen Recorder. And then I edited and added myself, of course, I said to my sudoers list and all groups. Now, I do that because if you're just a single user on a computer, it doesn't really make sense to limit yourself to certain groups. It's just best to put yourself into all of them, and as you add programs that create groups, add yourself to that group. It will save you so much headache in the future. For instance, when I first started up the QV4L2 here, it started, but it would not see the webcam. And I'm thinking, oh no, what's wrong? Did I screw something up in the kernel? Did I mess something up with the drivers? Why won't this work? And I'm kind of scratching my head and and then it hits me. Oh yeah, I bet you I just don't have the rights because I'm not in the group. So I changed those, and voila, without any other fanfare, it's now working. Now, the easiest way to do that is if you come over here and let's just go ahead and go back to root. If you do a cat of etc group, you will see every group that is available at this current time. And I went ahead and added myself to these groups with the user mod. So you do sudo user mod, and don't put the caps on there. And then if you're interested in knowing what the commands are, you can do a help. Now, so what you'd want to do is the -A for append, -G to the groups. And if you want to be selective, you can. So I didn't put myself, for instance, to input group. I must have probably just missed it. But for instance, you want to be able to use the USB. So you want to put yourself in the USB. You want to be able to use the CD-ROM or the DVD. So you put yourself in the CDRW. You want to be able to use your webcam or screensavers and all that. You want to put yourself in video. Audio, if you want your user to be able to manage the audio devices, different things like that. You can pick and choose, or in my case, I just try to put myself in everything. But if you wanted to do that, say the old, when you created your user, wheel, audio, for instance, etc., etc., etc. And I used commas. I can't remember if it's comma or if it matters, but I used commas like this, and then next and next and next, etc., etc. And then, of course, your user ID. Just like that. And then it'll add yourself or append yourself to those groups. And then if you're wondering, did it really do it? You can always do that cat, and you can then see that now I'm in there. For instance, if we looked at the, since I forgot myself in the other area, user mod, -A, -G, input, DasGregor, and now if we cat that group, we will see that if we look at input, I'm now in that group. And if I logged out, logged back in, I would have all the rights of that group. It's something that, as a single user in a system, it can be very useful. If you want to pick and choose just the ones you want, that's fine. If it's something that you're thinking, why is this not working? You might want to check to see if there is a specific group that got created. For instance, if I was to install VirtualBox on here, there would be, I believe, the VB users group or a VBox users or something like that that I would need to use or add my user account to so that I can use those programs properly, since it does address the hardware directly. So just a few things to think about on that. Now getting back to the nitty-gritty. We look at this desktop, and I showed you how to put the background on here, but I have not talked to you about key bindings. I have not talked to you about how this i3 status, we installed the i3 status, but nothing else. So if we go over here, I have created myself some scripts. If we go to my home, for instance, and we go into scripts, I have a few things here, like i3 status edit, or i3 edit, i3 reset. If we do just a quick look at them, they're simple commands really, just to help me not have to remember what it is. i3 status edit, it's nano-w, you got your tilde /.config /i3 status /config. Now you can either remember where you store your config files, or you can create a simple script command. And if we look at my .bash, or I believe RC, you'll see that I normally have these things set up in every Linux. I put these aliases, because I like to always make sure my ls is in color. I always like to make sure that I can reboot and halt, which always requires the sudo command. Set up the reset so that it goes ahead and runs my reset script for the terminal. If I want to run slurm, should have muted my phone. In fact, I'm going to do that real quick. There we go. So slurm dash, I don't have slurm installed just yet because this is copied from one of my other machines. Of course, emerge, that's what I was talking about, why I don't put sudo emerge, because I've got the alias set up there. And the same thing for etc update is our. Now, what I meant about the scripts is I edit my path and add my scripts directory into there so that once I'm here, that I don't have to be in the scripts directory. I could be here and say i3 edit, and I can even tab that to finish it. Now your i3 config file may be a little different. And as you can see, it's in home, your user ID, .config, i3 config. There are some, if you look at the i3 wiki for Gentoo, there are some very good things that you can place in here. For instance, if you have hotkeys or soft keys, I should say, to increase or decrease your volume, those are the bind sims for those. This computer, and I have them because I copied this from another computer. This one has those, but they were burned out a long time ago. This is a very old laptop. New window, you can set up these sort of things. I've got, for instance, my IRC set up so that if I hit my mod key plus I, it executes my script to start IRC. I've got my Google Chrome set up so that that works. And you'll see some things that aren't in this just yet. For instance, at one time I had Basilisk, and I had that set up for mod B. I don't have that right now. We just have Google Chrome. And of course, I don't have Minecraft on there, but I did have it set up so it would run either the FTB launcher, the AT launcher, or vanilla Minecraft. Some miscellaneous, there's PCManFM, so I can just do mod plus P to get PCManFM started up. Same thing with Simple Screen Recorder and QV4L2. Now, I don't have the PA, VUC, or VU control on there, but if I go that route, I already have a bind sim set up. And same thing, I have gedit, of course, because I think I copied this from my LFS system. Your bind sims pretty much allow you so you can just do your mod and whatever else and have things work. This is a really nice command here. This is for scrot. What it does is it creates the screenshot, gives it this date for year, month, day, time, and then gives it an underscore scrot.png, and it places it inside of my screenshots folder. This is what I have here, for instance, for applications that if I open them, I want them to start in floating window mode. A very handy feature to have. And then I have set up for window resizing. And what I may try to do, I don't have these online anywhere, but if people are interested, most of these I got directly from either the i3 website or from Gentoo's i3 wiki. I didn't come up with any of this on my own, other than, of course, learning how to create my own bind sims. For instance, I've tried out a lot of different terminals in the past. And right now, of course, I'm using URXVT. At one time, I was using XFCE4 terminal. I had the console from back when I had my KDE system, and that's coming from my other laptop. I tried the i3 Sensible terminal at one time, which I don't think it ever really worked well for me. And I even tried one called Sakura at one time. Now for Compton to work, you have to set up this command, exec space -- no startup -id Compton -b -f. And then for the PN mixer to work, this is pretty much the same, exec -- no startup -id PN mixer. And those will set those up and run them in the background for you. And then right now I have my X screensaver set up. I have it with the no splash ID, so I don't see it pop up, but it just starts to work. And then of course we're using nitrogen, so that restores the background image. Those are the only ones that I have set up. You can see I had a lot of other things kind of going there. If this was my other laptop, I actually have a joystick or control panel or something like that monitors. It also has Bluetooth, which I don't have on this laptop, which doesn't work. But I just commented those out for now. And then at one time I was using the XFCE4 panel so that I'd be able to find applications, because one setback I find with i3 sometimes is if you go up here and you do D, unless you know the name of the package, you're going to have a hard time finding it. Sometimes it's a lot nicer to be able to just have that other panel that you can hit the start button and look at all your applications. Now, as for the i3 status, if we go back over to here, now, and when you're in that, you have to exit out with the escape key for it to allow you to do anything. So if we get out of here and we do an i3 status edit, there's a lot of different things that you can configure i3 status. If you had IP version 6, what order you want for your disk read for this part here is what gives me this part, the battery, the CPU temperature, and then the time zone. And if you wanted to have the wireless LAN, etc., set up for that, that's right there. Most of this comes default, and you just pick and choose which ones you want in there and comment what you don't want and allow for what you do want. So I don't use, for instance, ETH0, I only use the WLAN 0. And then the battery, of course. Now, you don't see these weird symbols inside of here, but if you were to look at Awesome and their font list, you can pick and choose inside of that in your browser what you want, copy it, and then paste it in here. And you're getting a weird character now, but eventually it will translate to what you see here properly within the GUI. It just doesn't show up properly inside of the terminal. So you can copy those in there, and that's what we use that Awesome font for. So if you go through, you'll find that a lot of this is just very easy to configure and set up. It's already set up for you for the most part. There's, for instance, another weird symbol right here and here, meaning that if anything were to use these, they would place them down here. Not really being a very good teacher since I'm just showing you my configurations, but most of that stuff was just there, and I just had to comment out, like I said, what I wanted to use and what I didn't want to use, and you comment out, of course, here at the top. You can also change if you wanted your disk to be towards the back end. Maybe you wanted your battery to be the very first thing. You just make sure that's first, and then whatever you don't want, you just get rid of it. Now, whenever you edit any of your i3 scripts, you need to reset i3. And I've created myself a script file. There's also a key combo that I can never remember, so that's why I create myself a script. So if we do a cat of my script on i3 reset, you can see it's very simple, i3-msg space reload. You can either type that in manually, or you can set yourself up a script that just runs it. And if I were to type in i3 reset after changing some of those items, it would reset, and I wouldn't have to go out of i3 and back into i3 for it to work correctly. So that's very helpful. And basically, at this point in time, we have a small, working, very functional Gentoo distribution that we have installed inside of another Linux distribution on a separate partition. We're using, of course, the boot from our original partition or OS, in this case LFS, and everything is working well. Now, it's not that fancy, it's not that great, but that's one thing I'll bring up real quick. Font config, if you do a Gentoo search on font config, and you go to here, this talks a lot about the different fonts that are available, and if you get down towards the bottom, it talks about how you can manage them with eSelect font config list to enable them, because once you've installed them, you still need to enable them for them to work. But it gives you a list of fonts that you might want to use that would work well for you towards the bottom here, and I find that very helpful. Picking fonts. like the Liberation fonts or Libertine or the Noto fonts, and it explains what they are and what they'll emulate. Um, for instance, I needed to install Deja Vu for VLC. I like to use the URW fonts because I like a lot of how those look. The core fonts, if you're looking for Microsoft, if you're looking for the unifonts, they're all right here, and you can always look at all the different fonts that are available if you do just an emerge-s fonts, put in your password, and there will be lines and lines and lines and lines and more lines of all these fonts that you can pick and choose from. And so you just find what you're looking for if there's something specific that you're trying to find. And like the URW fonts, I already have them. They must have already installed themselves within something else being pulled in. But you find the fonts, for instance, that you want, and you can go ahead and just do a simple emerge. And then once you've done your emerge, you do your eSelect font config list, and you'll see all the ones that are enabled have a blue asterisk on them. And like I said, once you've installed the fonts, if you want the system to be able to use them, you still have to enable it. So for instance, if I wanted this Deja Vu sans font, I would do eSelect font config. And if you ever wonder what you can do, you can see by just putting nothing there, it gives me the options of disable, enable, and list. So you would then say enable, and then whatever number that was. So in case of this one, if I want to enable this one, it's 29. So, and remember, you have to do a sudo. And there we go. Now if we do a list again and look at 29, we will see that it is now enabled, which means that it's now going to be able to be easily used by applications or anything else. I do wish that Gentoo would come out with some sort of a font meta package that would just pull in every font, because sometimes you just don't know what you want. I also wish there was a way to say enable all of these fonts instead of having to go through, but unfortunately you're going to have to go through each, and as far as I know, you'll have to go through each and every one of these and say enable 1, enable 2, enable 3, etc., 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 until you get all the ones that you're interested in all set up. Really, that is all there is to it. This gives you everything you need to do. You have basically everything at your fingertips. Anything that you need, you can now start with emerging, finding out those packages here or there that you want, whatever browser you want, file manager you want. I gave you some examples in part 4 and part 5 of what you can use, and that'll be very helpful for you. I don't think there's really that much more to discuss outside of Gentoo management, and those videos that I have done a few years back, for the most part, they're still very relevant. While some issues have changed, such as where package.use and package keywords are kept, those types of things are different. The way I do my use configurations, from now lately, I think it's best to do package-based use flags instead of global use flags. The more you can set per package, the better, I think, in the long run, because you're going to run into a lot fewer conflicts. That being said, a lot of it is personal preference. There are not any right or wrong ways of doing it. It's what you feel comfortable with. So if it's morning, evening, noon, or night, I'm hoping that you're seeing this and happy that everything is working well for you. I know I have seen some comments about those who have gone through this and spent hours upon hours setting this up to have it blow up and barf on them. And that's one of the things why I've said in the past, maybe a VirtualBox to try it out the first couple times to get comfortable with the setup is a good thing. Or in this case, using this set of tutorials to install Gentoo in a 20 gig partition that you can set aside. And that way you've got your primary OS good to go. Now, granted, that primary OS really should be a Linux one. You can't really do that very easily with, say, for instance, wind blows. But you don't have to wipe your system and start all over. And I hope to all of you, best of luck getting the Gentoo system that you want. It's a lot of work, but I've been using Gentoo very easily for 15, 16 years now, and I've been very happy with it. I try out other distributions and I'll look to see what's out there because it's not for everybody, and people come to me and ask me all the time about what I would suggest. So I have to know what those others are like. But for me, I always, always come back to Gentoo. It's my comfort. It's what I feel works best for me. And that's the best thing about Linux. There are so many choices out there that you can find the distribution that works for you. And when you do have that distro that works for you, stick with it. Don't keep bouncing. Don't keep searching. Just stick with it. It's okay to try those other ones. It's okay to dabble and check them out. But when you find one that all your packages work and you found that sweet spot and that synergy that you feel good with the way your operating system works, then you really should stick with it. Because I've tried a lot of different things. A couple years ago, I did 52 reviews in 52 weeks. Every week, I installed something new, tested it out. There were some distros that, wow, this is sweet. I could use this distro as a secondary distribution, or if I ever just got tired of compiling everything, and believe me, someday I'm going to get too lazy and I'm not going to want to compile everything again, and I'll go towards a bin-based distribution. But until then, I'm really happy with what I have. But there is a lot to choose from. Just find the one that works best for you. And if it works with all your hardware, if it works with all your software, stick to it. But until then, enjoy Gentoo and enjoy compiling. Bye, guys.